Now, the case against 5 men charged with the murders of rapper Kiernan AKA Forbes and celebrity chef Tebello Tibz Motsoane has been postponed to the 8th of May. The suspects appeared in the Durban Magistrate's Court earlier today, and the case was transferred to the Durban High Court. The matter was postponed in November due to ongoing legal proceedings, including an appeal in Eswatini challenging the surrender order of 2 of the accused, the Gumede brothers. Now, Forbes and Motsoane were gunned down on Durban's popular Florida Road. That's back in February 2023. Legal analyst Abigail Ngobene joins us for a little bit more when it comes to this one. Abigail, on the 10th of February will be exactly 2 years. One could say that still no justice has been found, ultimately because of all these delays. Are we finally ready for court on May the 8th?
Good afternoon and good afternoon to your viewers of Newzroom Afrika. Thank you very much for having me today. Yes, of course, what transpired today in court was to the effect that the 5 accused before court were given what we call an indictment. An indictment is something like a charge sheet in the district and the magistrate court. So in that document, the list of charges that they'll be facing on the 8th, as well as summary of facts, as well as the statements that, of course, will be the statement of witnesses. And to answer your question, yes, we have seen that the court was particular to say this matter from the magistrate court side is trial ready, and on those bases now it can be transferred to the High Court. We are hopeful that we will see it rolling, we'll see it enrolled for trial anytime sooner.
So that means then no more delays ultimately, because one would think that the bail hearing in itself, the new evidence that was supposedly said to be brought in, the judge had ruled that there was indeed no new evidence. But the problem becomes that you still have the Ngobene brothers, the Gumede brothers, apologies, who are still, of course, in Eswatini. How will that fare when it comes to this case?
Okay, what had transpired earlier on, you'd remember that the accused persons brought through their legal representatives to say they want to be released. That will be a bail on new fact, which happened last time. But amongst other things that the magistrate ruled on was to say the Eswatini matter does not play a factor on this particular matter, which has been transferred to the High Court now, given the fact that the state has elected to proceed with the 5 in the absence of the 2. So whether the Gumede brothers are brought later, it will not affect this matter, which is running before the Durban Magistrate Court and soon to be in the Durban High Court. And the statements were given, which means to say that on the state side, they are really ready to proceed. So then the Gumede brothers and Eswatini can join any time before the evidence is led, which of course, if this trial can commence now with the evidence being led without them being brought back, that will then mean that they will be tried on their own, separate from the 5. But as it stands, there's nothing from Eswatini that impact on the proceedings that are before the Durban High Court. The Durban High Court will be able to proceed further.
Am I correct in assuming then, because of the charges, which include a conspiracy to commit murder, unlawful possession of a firearm, unlawful possession then of ammunition, and of course those 5 counts of murder, there are further charges of money laundering which have been added. I don't know if you could share perhaps where that one came from.
The money laundering charge came, of course, on to the effect that there is an issue of 800,000, if you'd recall, and this particular 800,000 seemed to have been paid directly to accused number 4, who is Master Ngobene and also termed the mastermind. So apart from it being paid, there's also a distribution of such an amount to the various respective accused persons who are at the dock, particularly the ones that we have here. And of course, we know that even the ones that Eswatini received such a payment. So at the center of it all, the money laundering charges surrounds that. And of course, the state was particular, as well as the police, to say they will be following that money to see what was the purpose of. As stands, we know that it was said to be a business transaction, but of course, they have not come back to us to say how far have they gone with the 800,000 and whether or not there are further arrests that they had said initially that we should not really rule that off. So to answer your question, the issue of money laundering comes from the 800,000, which was deemed to be the proceeds of crime.
Yeah, very interesting one. So what happens from here then? One asks, between February and May, ultimately, is it about both sides just ensuring that they have all their ducks in a row, all the suspects, of course, still being remanded as well. And does this then ultimately mean that we can now count on this trial ultimately kicking off and then going to completion? How many more delays do you anticipate to come through from here?
From now, you'll remember that what transpired in court is the state said that there is a volume of state witness statements as well as other bundle of documents which needs to be exchanged digitally to the defense. That will mean to say they will come with the external hard drives to take that information, which will happen, of course, the beginning of next week. But what we will see and what we will expect will be to the fact that the defense will have to peruse those statements to see if everything that needs to be disclosed to them has been fully disclosed. And if there's something outstanding, they have a right to request what we call further particulars from the state, and the state, depending on when, they will be able to afford them with that. And after that, we will see issues of pre-trial taking place, where both parties will come and iron issues of common cause, iron issues which, of course, they say they agree together to say this kind of issues we don't dispute, this kind of issues we dispute. And then from there, once the pre-trial is finalized, we should be able to see the trial commence. As to how long will that take, that is another issue. Sometimes it depends on the cooperation between two parties. And in this matter, you'll expect a little bit of delay given that we have a different counsel, which means different legal team for respective accused persons that are on the dock. So, of course, all of them will have to fully participate, be afforded enough time to prepare themselves. And we are hopeful that they will work together with the state to ensure that this matter is properly enrolled for trial to commence.
I don't know if you're able to tell us, Abigail, just how much time ultimately each of the accused ultimately faces if they are indeed all found guilty on all of the charges at hand. I mean, it seems like a lengthy one.
This kind of cases and this kind of brutal killings, of course, are very severe, and it's going to be very difficult for me to jump before the drum beat. But having to consider the precedents and what other courts had ruled, serious contact crimes like this one goes up to life imprisonment. But one cannot really, of course, pin out. It will depend on how the defense will come and mitigate, submit factors that the court, should they be convicted, the court would consider to say in mitigation, they should consider this. And of course, you remember that in as much as we have the issues of where the court will have to consider each person's role in the matter and ultimately find them guilty if that comes to that space of a murder and a crime which will be termed to be a doctrine of common purpose where they acted together. But the court will still have to look each person's involvement and part that they took in commission of a crime and see the severity there to determine the sanction that will be applicable to each one of them, regardless, of course, of how they will be found guilty.
Very finally, let's talk about the move then from the Magistrate's Court to the High Court. Is that normal procedure ultimately in a case like this, moving then ultimately from the regional court then to the High Court?
Yes, you'd remember that there are other instances where the prosecution, as the demonstrators would say, they feel like the sentence that needs to be imposed in this particular kind of a crime does not fall within their jurisdiction. And on those bases, they will have to choose either in terms of the criminal procedure to transfer it into the regional court or the High Court. And in this kind of cases previously, and looking at the seriousness of the criminal offenses which are committed by the accused persons with the dog, it will only make sense and legal sense to have it transferred to the higher court, given that there would be issues of maximum sentences to be imposed should they be found guilty. So to answer your question, this is normal. It has happened before on issues of crime such as this one.
Yeah. Very interesting to kind of note this as well. And of course, that procedure ultimately kicks into gear. Abigail, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it there. Abigail Ngobene, who's a legal analyst, then joining us as we talk about the indictment then of the 5 accused in the AKA and Tibz murder trial, then kicking off ultimately on the 8th of May is when that trial is anticipated to start. Then 5 accused here in South Africa. And then you'll have the 2, of course, who are still in Eswatini, that is.